Hi everyone. So fair warning, I am going to ask for some audience participation um, during my talk, and I am quite humbled standing here before you with this lineup of incredible speakers and the discussions that have been going on. So I've taken some time to put together some slides. I've had fun putting these together. I hope you enjoy the story that I'm going to share with you. It is quite a difficult challenge to balance all of the discussions that we've had. Today I'm going to just let the story speak for itself, and we'll see what you think of it at the end. My true feeling is that if you want to understand the future, you have to begin by acknowledging the past. So if we were to draw a little circle on a timeline, and I'll just say T0 represents now, and then we go back 2,300 years, and if we use this room as our timeline, please may I ask the good people at the wall there just to put up your hand and wave. If this was an Apple event, I would have a screen all the way to the end there. But I'm South African, so we make a plan. Thank you very much. So that's what I'm talking about on my timeline. And imagine if we had access to Aristotle at the Library of Alexandria. Now, any history buffs might challenge me, because I'm not a historian, that Aristotle wasn't around at the time of the library. But that didn't stop mid-journey from generating this lovely image for me. So that's what I imagine he might have looked like. And what would you ask him? Such an incredible thinker of that time, having access to that wealth of information. I like to think, what would inspire him? What would get him excited? This mid-journey thing is pretty good. I do suspect that having instant access to the world's information would definitely be up on his list there. Now, as the story goes, the ships at the harbor of Alexandria were forced to hand over all of their manuscripts and scrolls. In today's terms, we might say they were regulated. There was a regulator saying, "Thou shalt hand over your information." And I've also heard that the scribes sometimes handed back the copies of the information, which is interesting. But that was a very ingenious way to make sure that they accumulated that information centrally for people and great thinkers to get access to. If we fast forward to about here maybe, put up your hands, this row over here, thank you, T minus 23 years. This is a time where Alta Vista, I don't know who remembers that one, Yahoo, were just being taken over by Google PageRank's, the PageRank algorithm. And I remember sitting there thinking, is this thing ever going to be better than those human curated lists that Yahoo and Alta Vista were providing? Turns out they definitely were. Their goal to organize the world's information, I think they did that. So I like to think, imagine if somebody like Aristotle had access to this level of information. What would he have come up with then? Imagine having access to AI. Isn't she beautiful? Exactly a year and a half ago, I still believed that AI would not be able to generate art and creative images. I think she's wonderful. This is mid-journey. What would you ask her? So this is a RegTech conference, and I love RegTech, so I said, well, imagine it's 2033, 10 years ahead. What were the achievements of regulatory reporting? And this is what she said. I'm going to run through these 10 items quite quickly. But Johan, you're also part of the participation. I have an envelope, which I think is going to be a pretty good predictor, which summarizes everything we've discussed in this conference. And you may open that at the end of the conference, and you can judge whether she was pretty close or not. I'll rapid pay you, pay sharp. Yeah. So she said, with predictive analytics, we can use this to do predictive risk modeling, risk-based reporting, and the regulators have utilized algorithms and sophisticated pattern matching to be able to predict what might happen or where there would be areas that require attention, so that they can allocate resources effectively, pay attention to high-risk areas, and put in preventative measures. Yeah, that's pretty good. Like that, makes sense. Real-time automated reporting. We've been talking about real-time payments a lot. This is my version of that story on the regulatory reporting side. So if we look at the types of things that she's mentioning, distributed ledger technology, real-time automated reporting, can leverage these mechanisms. This is one that I'm feeling is quite important. Organizations have seamlessly integrated their internal systems, and that's so that the data can flow from all the various sources of information, all of the Excel spreadsheets that you know exist there somewhere in that business, and they come together and they flow through to the regulator when required. And this allows them to have faster detection of risks and perform prompt regulatory actions. Smart contracts for compliance. This is an interesting one. What if the blockchain, the ledger, had enough rules to say, this is an event that needs to be reported, or this data isn't accurate? Let's do something about that. This can reduce the human error in the equation. Imagine that we've got standardized global reporting frameworks. Initiatives like CRS, which came in many years ago, Common Reporting Standard, is very much a glimpse of what this might look like, and we keep going. What's really important in this comment of hers, which resonates with what we've been seeing, is that to pull this off, we have to have common terminology or a common vocabulary. A gentleman yesterday used the lovely term, if we're comparing apples and bananas, that's not going to work so well. So we need that common vocabulary to be able to pull this off. Imagine that we've had seamless data sharing and interoperability, and here she acknowledges the strict data privacy and security standards. This is really important to me because the world is only getting more regulated, the data is only getting the volumes are getting larger, and the frequency is increasing. So if we can't solve that challenge, it's irresponsible for us to be gathering that amount of data. And let me remind you, the regulatory data is the most sensitive data you have. It's the most poppy of poppy data. Automated data reconciliation and validation is where we've figured out how to reconcile these systems. And this will minimize the burden on people and organizations. This is a cool one, regulatory sandboxes. I think our South African regulators and others are doing well on this one. I'm working very hard with my team so that we can afford to play in that space. But I've seen some of the, large banks and organizations are already getting involved in regulatory sandboxes, and we must be grateful that our regulators are open to provide these controlled environments for us to experiment. And they are welcoming the non-traditional banks, and I'm quite excited about that. There's international data exchange agreements, which again understand the importance of the privacy concerns, and they allow for the efficient cross-border. There's a gentleman who keeps asking about cross-border. There you go. She also thinks it's important. And then there's enhanced regulatory oversight to create a holistic view of the industry. How do you get that holistic view? Well, you have to begin with getting a holistic view of your client, and then maybe broadening it out through your organization and then beyond. So that one view of a client is where we start. And this is an important one. By then, we figured out that we need a proactive compliance culture to allow all of this to happen. Okay, well, that was pretty good. I'm quite impressed because she's touched on just about every talk that I've been sitting on. If we just understand it as the reporting challenge. I know we've been talking about other parts of the chain, but that's pretty impressive. But why stop there? We do have access to AI after all. So please may that row over there put up your hand. Why don't we go into the deep future, 100 years ahead, and ask her? And that's roughly on my non-linear timeline here, about there. Thank you very much. And I asked her, what new inventions have changed the regulatory reporting landscape? And this is where it gets quite interesting for me. Holographic audits have allowed regulators to have an immersive experience to come and virtually check compliance. It's a bit out there, but okay. There's 100 years, I suppose. And this could happen in real time. You can get a very quick view of where the problems might be, and they can check. Quantum computing has allowed us to solve complex data analysis problems. And this is quite important to me because we pay a lot of attention to the performance of our systems, because without performance, you don't have the budget, the time budget, to do all of this cool stuff. So this resonates for me and my team, because if quantum computing has given us that step change to enable these algorithms to run, then I can start understanding how we're going to achieve this. I like this one, genetic algorithms for regulatory rule optimization. As a group of people who are fundamentally worrying about validity of data and the regulatory rules, having the idea of genetic algorithms and evolving these systems is quite exciting for me. Augmented reality and the visualization of reporting data. We play incredible video games. We have incredible experiences in the media and movies. Why can't we have that same level of immersion with the data that is so important to our economy? I can understand how this is a good idea. This is an interesting one. Mind-machine interfaces for real-time compliance monitoring. Now, this may be a little bit apocalyptic, chips under your skin and DNA and brain scans. Okay, but this is 100 years ahead. Interesting one. Neuro-linguistic programming. Now, this is NLP, but not the same way I know it, which is natural language processing. This one, first I thought that's what she meant, but it's not. Look at the words carefully. Neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm a developer. Is she talking about like brain script? I don't know. That's an interesting one. And we spend a lot of time encoding the regulator's requirements, the protocol specifications, into code. Maybe this means that we're speaking brain or something, maybe language, but I think this goes beyond that. That's an interesting idea. General intelligence for regulatory intelligence. So maybe we can declare our intent of what we need to gather, what we need to regulate, what we need to monitor. And the systems can infer how they're going to achieve that. Maybe that's what she means. Biometric authentication for secure reporting. This is quite important because how do you know that you're dealing with an individual and it is the individual you believe? So I think that is quite important for us to think about, because that's how we stop the corruption and the misuse of these amazing systems we're building. I like this one, autonomous reporting entities. So these are robots inside the organizations that are doing this regulatory reporting burden for us. I think there's a lot of other things that have to have happened to allow that to be the case, but I like that she picks that up. And then self-validating distributed ledgers. So we are using these cryptographic techniques and algorithms to ensure that immutability, and I've got a view on a possible way we can solve that problem of my standard 2 C mark. I'll show you in another slide, so thanks for that question earlier. But I think these core principles we've been discussing in the conference are acknowledged as being significant in achieving this seemingly crazy idea. Maybe you noticed in the corner of my screen, the shape of AI, her face was changing. Now, I like to think that by 21-23, the face of AI has become an African face with distinct African features. And I don't know about you guys, but yesterday, Kaluba, one of our speakers, she really reminds me of her. So she looked fabulous on stage. Don't know if she's in the audience, but that's the face that I can imagine 100 years from now. So I'd like to share with you what we're doing right now, what we're already doing. And if I take all of those ideas, 10 years ahead, 100 years ahead, and I list the items that my team and I have been working on already, I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what they look like, a quick snapshot. And what I can emphasize, and this was the talk that we presented last time at the conference, is we've discovered the reason why we need to do regulatory reporting. And this has to be number one on our list and on your list and on everyone's list. The reason why we do all of this is to save livelihoods. Let me ask you, again, audience participation, Johan. Who disagrees that saving livelihoods, who does not want to save livelihoods? Put up your hand. No one. Let me do the reverse question, see if you're awake. Who agrees that saving livelihoods is important? Put up your hand. Everyone without their hand on is busy checking emails quickly, I'm sure. For my esteemed legal PhD colleagues that I met at lunch yesterday, let the record show that the majority, if not the entire room, agreed on something. How many times in life do you see that happening? Wow. That has to be number one. I would love to see regulators telling us this is why we need to be regulated to save livelihoods. I need to see more of that. We all do. This is our guiding principle as techies to say, are we getting closer to saving livelihoods or are we getting further away? That is how we regulate ourselves. Important. Seemingly strange one, virtual addresses. We've had the privilege of working with new digital banks that have targeted the previously unbanked. Currently, the idea that you have to provide an address to report the individual if they're FICA approved means that we pre-bias the solution to people that live in traditional neighborhoods. So we've been exploring with ideas of what if we could give them a virtual address, meet the FICA requirements, solve the problem of where they are located roughly, and solve that part of it. I know we might be moving away from addresses, but maybe this is an approach that can still give us the benefit in the bridging period. Dirk, you mentioned, and a few people have mentioned the importance of balancing rule-based systems, explainable AI with the creative AI that we see today in GPT and others. Pattern networks is something we've come up with, so we need the mathematician brain along with the poet brain that we see in with GPT. Dirk, you spoke about the adaptive systems. This is my response to that. Our goal is to build the one-day spec change, the protocol specification. One day after the regulator releases it, we will have the entire end-to-end system ready to go. And we have to use everything we've learned and done to be able to achieve that. This is one of the tools we built. AI-based spec encoder. A lot of the regulators give us the specs as PDFs. Some of them give it to us as data. That would be great if we had more of that. But until then, we use machine vision techniques to extract the data and good user experience so that we can get those specs encoded in a day. Sometimes you have to invent your own words. We're not afraid to do that. Synchrotron is about getting multiple endpoints of data synchronized, even if their data structures are different. That's how we're going to streamline that flow. Another word we invented, the templatron. This allows us to regenerate production code, dispose of production code. Yes, that stuff you've spent millions on and been working on for years. I'm saying throw it away. Get good at throwing it away so much that it becomes disposable. And then regenerate it from the data, the patterns that people build, and working prototypes. That's how we're going to